thinking. I pulled in my sketches, and I think what I'm gonna use as the basis of the dress is just like a boxy, like shapeless shift dress. And that'll be like the shape of the house. And then if I add the lawn to the literal bottom of the house, just attached to me, I'll have a place to put jack-o'-lanterns. I think that's important. To add all of these little details, I'm just gonna applique them on. And so to make the dress be able to withstand the weight of that many appliques, I'm gonna quilt the fabric first. And for the window and the doors, like the shutters, I want those to like actually open. So I'm gonna figure that out somehow. And then for the roof, I'm thinking just like a big detachable Peter Pan collar. So I went with this like mottled gray fabric instead of just straight black, hoping it would give kind of more of a decrepit haunted house look. And then I just sewed a big strip of green onto the bottom and then fused it to some just cheap fusible fleece. And then I'm going to take that and run it through my sewing machine, quilt it with just like long horizontal lines that'll kind of look like the lines in the facade. And then in the grass, I did zigzag stitches. Here's what the pattern looks like all printed out and taped together. It's super easy, just 2 pieces, front and back cut in the fold, and then there's 2 breast darts on the front half. Now I need to make patterns for all of the little applique pieces. We got the door, the path, the pumpkins, the windows, the shutters, the tombstones, the ghosts. I'm probably forgetting some things, but yeah, I need a paper pattern for all of those things. And to do that, I am literally just eyeing it out. I am eyeing it out, cutting the paper in half, using my ruler, tracing objects around me. For pieces like the curtains and things that are symmetrical or things that I need multiple of, I only need to make one pattern for because I can always flip it on the fabric to cut it up the other direction. So here I am just laying out the pieces that I cut onto the front of the dress and seeing if I like the size, seeing if everything fits. I did end up going with this, even though I do kind of think the windows are too big. Now that I'm kind of looking at it. Oh well. I'm gathering some fabric from my stash. I'm just going for anything that's kind of Halloween-y colors, you know? Like orange and black, you get it. I'm using 3 types of interfacing for these appliques. The first type that I'm using the most of by far is the Pellon featherweight interfacing and some heat and bond light. And then the stiffened interfacing is for the shutters and the door. Here I am just tracing out the pattern pieces that I made onto the respective colors of fabric, and then I'm giving myself a 1/4 inch seam allowance and then cutting it out. And quite quickly I realized that I should be cutting the interfacing and the fabric at the same time. Even better, sew around the pieces and then cut them both out at the same time. That's smarter. But anyway, this process is called turned edge applique, and basically all I'm doing is tucking all the raw edges into themselves. That's what the featherweight interfacing is there for, just to keep all the raw edges tucked away so you don't get any fraying. And I'm just doing this for all of like the main pieces of the appliques. The detail pieces will go on top with the heat and bond light later. So now I'm just sewing around all of the pieces, and you can see I'm not leaving a gap. I am sewing all the way around the applique piece, and I'm going to turn them by cutting a hole into the back side, into the interfacing side, instead of leaving a gap and flipping it like you normally would. And that means I don't have to go back and top stitch it later. And if you're wondering, yes, this did take about 1 million thread changes. Clipping all of my corners so that they will turn out and press neatly. And then here you can see I'm separating just the interfacing side, cutting a slit, and that's what we're going to turn it through. Making sure to push out the edges and kind of roll the seams so they sit nice and flush, and poking out my corners nicely. For any pieces that have curves, for which there are a lot of. I'm making sure to clip all the way around the curve. Do not clip your stitching. I did that more than I'd like to admit. But that helps the seams, when you flip it, just sit nicely and flat inside your applique. Now just give them all a good press and get nice and crispy edges. Now see, here I am doing it the smart way, where I cut after I sew the pieces together. If that makes sense. That way you don't get any shifting while you're sewing. Moving on to the Heat and Bond light, I am tracing on all of the detail pieces, like the window frames, the curtains, the old jack-o'-lantern faces, like the pavers on the pathway. You see I just used my pathway pattern piece as a guide to just freehand on the little stones, because that's what I'm using this for. Anything that's going on top of the turned edge applique pieces that we just made. And then roughly cutting around the shapes, just separating them out by like which color fabric they need to go onto. And then I'm going to iron those onto the respective color of fabric that they need to be. So the window frames and the paver stones are getting this nice dark gray color. Jack-o'-lantern faces are yellow. The curtains are going to be purple. And then here is me realizing that for the window piece, with the turned edge applique plus the 2 layers of Heat and Bond light on top, it's going to be too thick to sew through. I mean, my machine probably could do it, but it would not be happy with me, especially because they have adhesive on the back. I mean, it just gunks up your needle. So I just cut out a square with nothing. Now here's the most fun part of all of this, I think. It was arranging all of the pieces so you get your final image, your final applique that's going to go onto the dress. Here I'm starting with the attic window, adding in my little ghosty. You can see you just peel the paper backing off of the Heat and Bond light, and then arrange them, sandwich them all in there however you want them, and then press them with the iron, and they'll all adhere to themselves to make one piece. I think you could do a lot of crafts with this method. I have done a lot of crafts with this method. It's super fun. You can make whatever you want with this. Any image that you want, and put it on whatever you want. And plus, it's so much fun to peel the paper backing off. And here is the mess that you are left with after all of that. At least it's fun for your cat. Here for the back, I just laid the interfacing directly onto the back, and then use that as the guide to just freehand the chimney. I want the chimney to go all the way up the back, sewing all around the edge, flipping it, and that's our chimney. And I could go in and cut out individual bricks out of fabric for this, but that sounds unfun. So paint, it has officially entered this project. I'm using GAC 900, which is a textile medium, just helps your paint be more flexible. It also makes it machine washable, which I doubt I will machine wash this project, but there you go. I'm mixing up a nice gray paint, and then that sponge, that's a sanding brick that I found in my house. That was the closest thing to the shape of a brick that I had, and you know what? It ended up working out perfectly. Here she is. I really like how that turned out. Oh, here is me realizing that behind my door is black, like the light is off, and behind my windows is yellow, like the light is on, and that doesn't make any sense, so I must change one of them. I was really mad about it, but really there's nothing that can be done, so I had to, and since it was already fused, I had to do the whole window again. moving parts, or they don't really move. They can be moved. The movable 3D elements, the attic window shutters, and the door. I'm using that stiffened stabilizer. It's like a craft stabilizer. You can get it at Joann's. It's really cheap. You can also use stiffened felt for this, but basically I'm making a sock, a little sock for the shape of the stabilizer. I'm sewing all the way around it, except I'm leaving the bottom open so that I can slip the stabilizer into it. Then just flipping them, boom, and then slipping the piece of stabilizer up in there. It's a tight fit. You want it to be tight. And then just for the ends, I'm just tucking in the seam allowances into itself, kind of like you would wrap a present. So this nice clean edge on the bottom, like that. And then sewing that down. And then now I'm gonna go all the way around the edges, kind of forming like, what are they called? The tines? No, the slats, like the slats in a shutter. I'm giving that illusion by making a bunch of straight stitches all the way up it, trying to be as straight as I can. This sucked because obviously you have to cut the threads between every little line. It took forever, but it's fine. I kind of like how it looks. I think it gets the point across of what it's supposed to be. And then for the door, I was going to use this brown fabric, but I've had this random fat quarter that looks like literal wood, and I think it would be a shame not to use it for this wooden door, right? And so I did the exact same process again, except I didn't do the lines. I just gave it a little top stitch around the end. And then for the doorknob, I consulted my little box of findings, and I had a brad and a thumbtack. I ended up going with the thumbtack. They both looked pretty good though, but the thumbtack was actually perfect. I'm actually proud of this, coming up with this. I think it looks great. I just stabbed it right through, and that made it easy. And then I took a pair of pliers and cut off the pointy part, and then another pair of pliers and just like bent it straight downwards, and that held it in place. I didn't need to glue it or anything. I've attached the door, so I just sewed straight down the side, and it worked. Easy. I think I'm going to start attaching things to the dress now. All right, we can finally put all of these appliques onto the dress. So I just laid them out, arranged them where I wanted them, and we're gonna sew these suckers down. Remembered I have this. This is basting spray, and it's like spray glue for fabric. But I'm pretty sure you could just use a glue stick also. But I'm gonna use that to help me tack these pieces down so they don't move when I'm wrangling this big thing under my machine. Hello. Probably shouldn't do this directly on your floor. Okay, I think I'm literally just gonna go around in a straight stitch around both pieces, starting with just these two. We'll see how that goes. Alright, it went just fine, except for it was kind of a bitch to wrangle the door with the stabilizer through the neck of the machine. I really regret that. So I added the shutters after that, and then the windows are back. The windows with the light on are back. I felt like the back of the dress looked too empty, so I added that. I don't know where that bat went. That bat did not make it onto the final project, but I kind of wish it did. Moving on to some embroidery details. I'm gonna stitch on the little like tombstone etchings, as well as the like house numbers onto the wall. I'm using an air erase pen here. These are godsend. If you don't use an air erase pen, I want to know what you use for marking your fabric, because this always works. And it just slowly disappears over time. It's excellent. So I just drew on a little design. I'm just using a back stitch, just a plain old back stitch, nothing fancy. For the lining, finally, I'm not doing a regular lining like you would line a dress, like I'm sure the instructions on this dress say to do. I threw those away immediately. By that, I mean I didn't print it out. Basically, I'm going to back it like a quilt. So I cut out the exact same shape as the outer shells. Now I'm just using that basting spray again to hold it in place while I pin it down with some safety pins. I don't want this to shift at all while I sew it down. This is called the quilt sandwich, and it's how quilters, back their quilts. Usually they would do this before sewing their details down, but I didn't want a bunch of crazy stitching on the inside of my dress, even though no one's ever gonna see it. And then I'm just gonna run that through my machine. I'm gonna sew all the way up the perimeter of the front and the back with just a straight stitch to kind of hold those in place. And then I'll put the two pieces right sides together and sew up the side seams and the shoulder seams. And just like that, we officially have a garment. And then I had to make a quintessential emergency trip to Joann's because I needed green double fold extra wide bias tape. And then I put that around the edges of the dress and like the armholes. And I didn't film me actually doing it because I have to follow a YouTube tutorial every time I put this stuff in. She looking all sewn together. It is time to move on to the collar. The pattern I'm going to use, I have this pattern already. This is for like your standard detachable Peter Pan collar from Tilly and the Buttons. You can print this out for free in the description of our tutorial video. It's a great pattern. I've used it lots of times, but I'm going to try to modify it. I've never modified a pattern before, but I'm going to try to make it more, like bigger and more like a roof. So I just put that pattern piece down onto a bigger piece of paper. Basically all I copied directly was like that curve of the neck hole. Gave it like an approximate shape and then moved it over to the dress form to kind of cut it exactly where I wanted it to be. You can see there it's like hitting the attic shutters. You don't want that. This is what I ended up with. It's kind of a weird shape, but it worked. Then I pinned some ruffle that I had to the right side of the collar. There's on one side of the fabric, there is some medium weight interfacing to kind of make it more like stiff. Yeah, there it is, see? And then I'm just clipping the curves and flipping that whole thing right side out. And the whole time I knew that this trim was way too wide for this project, and yet I carried on. Does this look like literally just like a fish? Okay, so I've pinned this side, just the trim right in half, so it's shorter, because I kind of feel like this is too floppy and it gets stuck on the window and it looks like a fish. Okay, that was very, very annoying, but I ended up seam ripping it all out, properly gathering the trim and then reinserting it. And I think that looks better. I ripped it here. It's fine. So I've got just 2 squares of black fabric, one with the medium weight interfacing on it, and my pattern, which I made just by folding a piece of paper in half, cutting it. I made sure to make the middle much wider because it's going to be gathered in the center like this. Does that look like a bat wing? Or does that look like a pasta? Anyway, for the tails, I just folded it, trimmed the edges, and then I'm going to leave a gap here and sew around here. And I'm going to sew right on this line with these 2 pieces right sides together and not leave a gap, just like we did the turned edge appliques. For the moon, I'm not sure if this is going to work, but I just drew a moon on a piece of felt and it's on that stiffened stabilizer. And I'm thinking I'm going to sew on it, cut it out, and bead it, maybe. We'll see. That looks like a bat. That's a little bat. Oh, I gotta stitch up that gap real quick. Hold on. Bow. Huh? Ooh, that's too big. That's too big! To assemble the bow, all you need is a needle and thread. Super easy. I just pressed a line up the center of the tail and the top part. And then I'm just running a big running stitch through both of them. Going back and forth to gather it really tightly in the center. And then I'm just taking that same thread and wrapping it around the middle really tightly. And there you go, that's a little bow. I actually think this is so stinking cute. When you think of a bat bow, I always think of the ones that are like cut out bat wings out of like pleather or something. You know, that was really big back in the early 2010s. I had those too. They're cute, but I like mine better. I think this is an adorable shape that I could actually wear other places. Oh, I'm just wrapping a little piece of fabric around the middle for the middle of the bow. I'm holding it in place there with some fabric glue while I just run some stitches through it. Super easy. Can't be easier. I think this is a cute enough shape that I can make it in other colors just to have. Oh, I ended up redoing the moon completely much smaller, and I beaded it, which was super fun. I didn't film it because I didn't know what I was doing, but really all I had to do was just literally sew the beads on. I know that sounds stupid, but that's literally all it is. Truly I am a wing it and see what happens kind of crafter, and it usually works out okay for me. And I just backed it in another piece of felt. It's just felt and seed beads. Look how cute. Super effective, I think. Oh, and then an alligator clip, because that's what I had. I just sewed it on, and it's nice and secure and really adorable. Okay, that's all. Thank you for watching. Bye!